I get to Pete the Bumbling Modeller back again. So just put this drill away before I get confused as to what's what. Sorry, I meant to have before. Again, my bench is a teetering mountain of grunge, but we'll get over that. Let's do this. And this will be the final part of this Suzuki build, so you'll... Oh, there it is. You'll see it all completed, then some stills of it at the end. I'm just I should have done this before I turned the camera on, but just want to get this bit done while the house is quiet. Right, so what have we done? This is still a loose fit, so all these cables from the carburetor, I was going to make a little bracket to hold them. They all sort of bunch up there, and you can see so little of them. I've just cut them a little bit longer than the height of those frame rails. They're just flopping around in there, but when the tank's on, they look like they're going to where they should be going, all connecting up. You can't see underneath that gap, so that's all okay there. On the bike itself, I've put in the 2 brake lines and connected them to the reservoir there. So it had a couple of plastic blobs on there, so I've used this standard cable you get with the kit and then put the 0.5 wire, looped it down. I've just tacked them together with a bit of super glue there so they hold together each side, so that's fine. Back at the temperature gauge, I've got a bit of cable going into the radiator. It all adds these little bits of detail, I guess. I've painted these anti-vibration pads of rubber black just so they stand out a bit differently. Got a bit of super glue on the exhaust there, and I got a bit of super glue on the fairing now, but this 2K is so hard I could just polish it out, so it's not a real problem. I've started to put the throttle cables together, so I've just left it like that so you can see I've done it. So I've got a couple of pieces of copper wire in there, and on the other two I've got the sleeves of this stuff over. Then I'll just plug in some 0.5 cable. I'll loop it round and just feed it into the frame somewhere. It'll probably come through the forks and through that gap there, something like that, and just leave it loose inside here, so when you turn the handlebars, they're free to move if you turn the handlebars, and it'll look like they're connected to the carburetors, but they won't actually be. Or I may have 2 looping through this side. I'll do it so it fits in the fairing as a general rule. Seat's been glued on, knocked off and glued on again, but I've put a couple of little bolt heads in there so it looks like they're secured properly, because that's what it should be on the real bike. So yeah, I think that's all I've done on the actual bike since you've seen it, just general tidying up and sorting out. I've got the final few pieces to go, which will be, there's a little breather cap that goes in there. On the real bike, that's a white plastic, so it's on white styrene. I'm not even going to paint that. I'm just going to put that in and have the cable going down, so that'll be that finished. I needed to get the footrests done so that it can stand on its stand. The stand basically just clips on the rubber of the foot pegs. So that is the after and that is the before, just so you can see the difference of what I'm doing. So whenever there's been a little blob on here, I've drilled that out and put in some bolt heads. So it's little dome headed bolts there, cap screw there, and 2 big cap screws there. So that looks a bit more, it's sprayed steel by the way, and then I've used a little bit of this oil and grease stain around these bolts here, the pivot bolts where that go up and down. So I've got to do the same for this one. I just wanted to show you the before and after so you can see what I'm doing, because it's not always that obvious. So that's that done. The bolt heads are all these ones I bought from Spot Models, and I wasn't sure about them. And before I bought metal bolts, and they cost a fortune. These are really cheap for a tray of them. And yet, say this tray was all dome-headed ones of different sizes. This is one tray of hexagon bolts or cap screws, depending on which way you want to look at it. And yeah, I don't think I paid much. I think it's a couple of quid for each, and all you have to do is prime them in black and spray them a metallic colour. I'm using MRP steel on these, and yeah, I think the finish is quite nice on the bike. That's up to you to decide, not me. But because of the resin 3D print, they're quite brittle, so to get them off, all you have to do is snap them, and they don't distort, so they just drop straight into the hole you've drilled. So yeah, they're spot models sell to the UK if you're in the UK, and you don't pay any import tax on it, but they're all over Europe. But if you look on their website, you'll find the manufacturer of them, and you probably get them in any country. So that's that done. The fairing is 99% finished. I had some little metal rivets which I've glued in. If you like catches, you'll see them. It just gives it that effect, so I'm quite happy with them. I wouldn't bother using them again. Actually, I'd probably use these resin ones, but I bought those first without realising the resin ones were as good as they are. And a couple of dome-headed resin ones just there. So wherever there's a bolt hole in the fairing, I drilled that out and sanded the bolt head. Sorry, I drilled that out and sanded the bolt head off before I painted it, so I could get a good finish on this. And then I've just put them in the existing holes, so that'll be ready to go on. In the front there, if you look at the proper bike, it's got a giant cross-headed screw that sits in there and screws into the front of the framework. So I've just got a little bit of styrene rod, turned it down to the right diameter so it just fits in there, and put a little slot in it there. So what I'll do when I'm spraying this footrest, I'll give it a coat of black and a coat of steel, trim it carefully there, and once the fairing's on, just glue into that hole on the front of that, so you haven't got a bit of black plastic showing through. So yeah, that's that's kind of where we are up to at the moment. It'll be trying to route the throttle cables next to make it look neat. Now I can't really do any of this on camera because I've just knocked the camera. I'm in close, and all you'll see is the back of my head. So I'll get that done and then show you what it looks like. Oh yeah, I've painted in the brake leaves as well using that aluminium pen. It's just an easy way of doing it, masking off. You just colour it in basically. So I'll get the throttle cables on, and then I'll probably shut down for the night. This is Saturday evening, and then Sunday morning I'll do the last finishing pieces and get it all together, because once these are on, I can get the stand and the rest like to scratch and scuff it. So with all my jiggling, by the way, I have managed to get to a point where I can glue this tank on and shuffle it around so those black lines line up, so I'll use a bit of slow setting glue and just chuck that in there, and my white stripe now lines up again, which is good, and it lines up all the way through to the front mudguard. So I'm happy with that, providing I don't knock that seat off again. This seat there, by the way, was just sprayed a German grey, but I used rapid thinners, Mr. Hobby rapid thinners, so it dried quickly, and I sprayed it from 18 inches, maybe a bit more away, so that by the time the paint was hitting that, it was already dry, so you get quite a rough textured finish to it, which looks like a scale version of foam. So that's how I did that. But anyway, I'm talking for the sake of it now, so I'll switch this off, get the other bits I need sprayed, and then put it together, take some photos out the fairing, assemble the fairing, because unfortunately you can't take that on and off. The wheel gets in the way, so you have to take the wheel off every time, and only want to do that once. So there'll be 2 lots of final finished photos. Some as a naked bike, some with a fairing, but that's basically where we are at the moment. So I'll be back. Okay then, so we're back again with the final assembly. So the basic bike is together. The overhead shot's the most appealing, so I'll tip it like that. So the petrol tank still isn't glued on because I've got to fit this little brace for the fairing, and it's easy to have the tank off than pop the tank on. So I'm going to take a few photos of it like this, put the fairing on and take a few more photos. Now for the fairing you have to have the front wheel off, and that's a really tight fit to get the tyre between those calipers. So I've been unscrewing it here and dropping the fork legs out so I can work away from the rest of the bike. Luckily I'd only plugged in these hydraulic lines, I hadn't glued them in, so I can do that. Oops, the tank's falling off, but that was always going to happen till we're done. It'll be glued on properly when it's glued on. The only real thing that's happened since you've last seen it is this whole footrest assembly's been glued into place. We've got the tank breather in, and I've had to manipulate the angle of the throttle cables so these sit inside the fairings. Those bits of wire I've put in there I've bent 90 degrees. It doesn't look the neatest, but they don't bulge outside the fairing now, they sort of follow it round and go inside, so that's okay. I've glued some little bolt heads onto the screws that hold things together. They're not the right size and they're not the best fit, but they do look better than the giant crosshead screw, so they're in there as well. That one didn't need it, so yeah, rather than have a crosshead screw just sitting there, I've put those in because that's the only bit that makes it look on bike like. The one bit you can't do it on is this one on the front. I can probably glue a bolt head on that side once it's all together, but I won't be able to there. So that one will always be the bit that gives it away when you glance at it, that and the main steering bolt, but I'll hide them as much as I can. So kind of where we are with that, apart from putting on the fairing, nothing's changed there, so I'll just have to uncobble it. The bolts I've been using, I was talking about before and I didn't know the name, but I found the original packet. So the resin bolts are these decal gas ones. So that's for these hex head stroke cap head ones I've been using. So you just spray and prime them, spray them, and then cut them off and glue them on. But they do all manner of sizes and they do all manner of bolt head designs and rivet designs, so they're probably worth looking at if you can do something like this, because it was, I don't think they were dear, I think there was sort of £3 or £4 for them, but that'll last several bikes, stroke cars, stroke anything, so they're not, in the grand scheme of things, they're not that dear. It's probably one of the cheapest upgrade parts you can get. Let's put that away so I don't lose it. And that drawer. That's the danger of that. I'll buy them so infrequently I'll forget what they are. But anyway, this is ready to have some photos taken as a naked bike, and then I'll assemble the fairing, and then it'll have that little bolt to glue in there, some little bolt heads wherever the fairing pokes through. This little cross member thing will go on, and again that's got little bolts chucked in there just to give it some visual appeal, so you'll see all that when it's on. So that's going to be it for now. We'll be back, you'll see in a second or two, and it'll have the fairing on, and then we'll be calling this one finished. So yeah, that's it. Okay, so that's this one completely finished now. So since you've last seen it, things like those little ugly black bits of plastic that stick through the fairing, I've glued little bolt heads onto those. Same on the front. When you look at photos, you seem to have a big cross-headed screw there, so I made that, a bit of sprue with a slot in it. It's not perfect, but it covers up a lot of what's going on. Tank's glued on, got little bits of lock wire you can just see on the handlebar grips. And it's all these little bits that add the sort of detail to it, really. So yeah, there's not much more exciting about that, really. This is one of these kits I'd always wanted to build, and I don't think it's been available since the very early 2000s, and that was in a colour scheme I didn't like. I'd rather do the Heron Suzuki one. Looking online, I think you can get it imported from Japan, but as a second-hand kit, I got it at an extortionate price rather than an exorbitant price. It was still dear for a 30-year-old kit, but if I wanted to build it, I wanted to build it. So did I enjoy it? Yes. I was nervous about doing it because I'd wanted to make it for so long in case I stuffed it up or it was an absolute heap of poo. I'm glad I ditched all the decals and went for my own colour scheme. I quite like that. I was a bit vain to say it, but it makes it look a bit different, and I'm quite pleased, apart from all the dog hairs and things attached to it, quite pleased the way it's turned out colour wise with the striping. It was just another way of challenging what I do. You can just build out the box all the time, but you won't ever grow like that, I suppose. But the bit I'm happy with is the stripes sort of line up on the fairing and the seat unit, because that took a bit of doing because the frame wasn't together when I started masking them. So I'm quite happy the way that's turned out, and all in all, it's something I really enjoyed making, to be honest. It was worth the years of waiting and saving up for it and waiting for the right one to come along. So yeah, I'll put some stills up of it now as a finished model. I've enjoyed doing it, and I hope you've enjoyed watching it. So there's not much more I can say to it than that. I'll put it back on its stand, and that's it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.